It's typical Yorkshire. It's a typical Yorkshire climb, and it's the defining characteristic of this stage 2 and the women's Tour de Yorkshire.
It'll be interesting to see if the teammate of Danny King, Sheila Gutierrez, we said that she's won a race this year, a very fast sprinter, but she can also really hurt herself. But now we have some pictures of the front of the peloton. These are the two riders that were chasing the lead group. They didn't make contact, now getting caught. But it's Anna van der Breggen putting down the pace, the Olympic champion, the teammate of Lizzie Deignan, who's just behind her. So this is what we expected to see from bottom to top. How much time can they get on their rivals there in the peloton, but also out there to catch the leaders. But they're not so much concerned about the leaders as they are the riders in the peloton. They just want to get as much time as they possibly can over the top of this climb. So they're the two strongest riders in this race. Anna van der Breggen, Lizzie Deignan. Who can match them? Can anyone match them on this climb? You'd expect not.
I tell you what, it's a good ride at the moment from Hannah Barnes in the white jersey and the red helmet, the British national champion. She's losing a bit of contact now, but she's towards the front of the race, which is where she needs to be. Corinne Rivera has made that selection, though, and Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen are forcing the pace here and breaking the race into little bits. And the only big favourite who is there, I think, on the wheel is Corinne Rivera from Sunweb. So good ride from her, but that's to be expected.
Well, Corinne Rivera's been fighting just to stay on the wheel, and these two, Anna van der Breggen and Lizzie Deignan, they won't slow down. They will continue to go at the same pace until they catch these riders, probably just near the top. Look, they've already caught one of the dropped riders, Gurashi, from the lead group, so that's one rider they've already caught, and they're just going to go out, these two, on pursuit to catch those. I guess the lead group, the lead breakaway group will be split up by now, and they'll just pick them off one by one.
Deignan looks so comfortable there, and that's the damage being done at the back. Lizzie Deignan barely breathing, and you could see the body language of Corinne Rivera, the rider from Sunweb, just beginning to get a little bit ragged behind that all-powerful, all-conquering duo who continue to drive on the peloton. There's Rivera digging in now. She just needs to ride her own race as they continue to sweep up the back markers. That's Trevisi from that original breakaway group of 10, which is beginning to fracture into pieces. But what an impressive ride from these two.
This is exactly what we expected from these two. And Rivera, she's already impressed me on this climb. She's not a climber, she's a sprinter, but she has proven that she can get through tough bike races in the classics this year, and her results are very much due to the way she can just keep fighting. You'll see Rivera, she'll lose a little bit more time, but she'll keep fighting, and we might see her teammate Ellen van Dijk come back to her, and that's what she really needs. But these are the riders up front. It's Amy Peters, Knaderman, Claudia Lichtenberg, Danny King. So no explosive attacks from there. Claudia Lichtenberg may have been instructed not to work because they have two sprinters that they've been thinking about getting to the finish of this bike race.
Amy Peters too would be well advised, I think, not to bury herself right now, because she's going to have to be put to work here for Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen. A teammate up the road, that's perfect for Boels Dolman. So it's all working out really well for the favourite team at the moment. They were very close, weren't they? The group of 10 up the road, or it wasn't 10 anymore, it was more like 3 or 4 riders to the top of this brutal climb. About 400 metres to go, if that information on your screen is to be believed, before they crest the only categorised climb of the day, the Lofthouse, and the gap has shrunk. It was a minute at the foot of the climb, maybe more than a minute, and it's now only 26 seconds, or even less, and closing all the while to Anna van der Breggen and Lizzie Deignan. God, look at that. That is just... it's almost walking pace climbing here, and that gives you an indication these athletes are really put to the sword here. These are brutal gradients. That's the front of the race. Amy Peters still driving things on. Danny King looking good, and so too, it has to be said, is her teammate Gutierrez, more of a sprinter.
Here comes the riders. Oh no, they're the drop riders we just saw behind, but how soon will Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen catch these riders out in front? 20 seconds is showing on our screen, and they're moving very quick.
That's van der Breggen, the European champion, the winner of Amstel Gold, Flèche Wallonne, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, all of which feature similar, I mean, not totally similar climbs, but this kind of terrain. So it's no surprise to see her thriving, and now Deignan gets on the front herself, and it's almost an effort for van der Breggen to hold the wheel of Deignan, who is just looking brilliant. Yorkshire lass, of course, from Otley, knows these roads pretty well.
This is gone exactly to plan for Boels Dolmans. They're just coming to the top, and Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen are just about to catch these riders. they'll have Amy Peters looks quite comfortable there, which is, you know, it couldn't be much better for the Bowles-Dolmans team at this point of the race. They have done everything right until now.
So now you start to think as well of the riders who will have been dropped, and they'll have been dropped by how much, that's the question now. Riders like Kirsten Wild, who won this race last year, the teammate of Danny King, the rider from Silence. Where is she on this climb? Is it a retrievable position? Has she got the teammates to bring it back? And thinks too of Lucy Garner from Wiggle High Five. Where's she? And Georgia Bronzini in particular. Over the top they go. Claudia Lichtenberg takes maximum points at the KOM, goes over the top in first place. Amy Peters in second, and Danny King in third place. And Dijkman and Van der Breggen, what, some 10 seconds further back down the road. So yeah, if they could have written the tactical rule book for the day, it would have looked something like this. It's a brilliant bit of riding as individuals, as athletes, but also tactically from the team car. Ridden to perfection so far, but we're only halfway through the race and there's plenty more still to come.
Well, Claudia Lichtenberg did put a little bit of pressure on the pedals over the top there, which has made it a little bit more difficult for Van der Breggen and Dijkman to bring back. They've dropped Gutierrez, so she's just communicating to Danny King that she's been dropped. Will Danny King swing off? Yes, she will. Wants her teammate to be able to get back.
Well, who does ride now, and with what intent? I mean, Amy Peters isn't going to drive this on. I think Van der Breggen and Dijkman, they need to get together, and Amy Peters will allow them to make the junction and then work for, well, Dijkman, isn't it, frankly? Van der Breggen is, I think, clearly on domestic duty for Lizzie Dijkman here in Yorkshire.
Look at the level of these two girls, the pace that they're coming back to these riders. They are in a class of their own. They're two of the best bike riders in the world. Lizzie Dijkman wearing the World Championship stripes, and Van der Breggen wears the European Champs jersey, but she's also the current Olympic champion. Last week they were the first and second place of Amstel Gold Race, Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège, so certainly a lot of strength and power and results in the legs of these two. So they've made contact now with that breakaway group. Perfect for Bowles-Dolmans, right on cue, and having Amy Peters in that break strengthens their position as well.
So that's the order over the line. Lichtenberg from Peters from King on the only categorised climb of the day. But do you know what, Rochelle? It's one of those nasty, nasty KOMs that's not the top. If you look at the profile, and indeed you look at the road rising in front of them, they've got another kilometre or so of uphill before they can start to descend. Well,
you can see they're still climbing now. So, yeah, I think a few of the riders in that group, especially now the Bowles-Dolmans riders, the three of them, the more hills and the tougher this circuit is, the better for them. You can see there Anna Van der Breggen's just started to show a little bit of expression on her face, but Lizzie Dijkman, she is absolutely in her comfort zone and really enjoying the race at the moment. Everything going to plan. Claudia Lichtenberg of Wiggle High Five is on the radio talking to her teammates, just letting them know what the position is, that those two riders of Bowles-Dolmans have caught the group, and a lot of communication will be going on now.
Masterful at the moment from Bowles-Dolmans. It's what the rest of the peloton would have feared, and it's happened. Now we've got 60 kilometres of racing still to go, and you can see the riders still coming up the road in bits and pieces. There'll be riders scattered in little groups, little clusters of 2 and 3 and 5, as we look back at the further down the road to see the chase group and who is in it. Hannah Barnes is definitely there. A rider from Drops, that's Colin Rivera, who is one of the favourites, and she is the rider from Sunweb in the black and white kit, just sitting in second place there. She's got a teammate, which is good for her. That was one of the riders, I think, initially who was in that breakaway group. Is that Georgia Bronzini?
It's a very good ride from Georgia Bronzini to be in this group, but also Colin Rivera's got a teammate there, Alan Van Dyke, so that's also super valuable. But Audrey Cordon, the French rider from Wiggle High Five. There's a rider there from FDJ. I'd put my money on that being Shara Gillo, and very well represented here. So I think there'll be some good teamwork between these riders.
I think it's an outstanding ride from Bronzini, as you rightly say, and also a brilliant ride from Hannah Barnes, who you wouldn't necessarily put in the category of rider who would have made it in the second group over the top of the climb. And they're not a million miles away, 34 seconds. They've got more numbers in that chase group, or it looks like it at the moment, and they probably have the motivation to try and bring this back as well. Now, the role of this Sunweb rider here in this group, she clearly won't be pushing on at the moment. Her team leader and the favourite, Corin Rivera, is in that chase group. And you might even suggest, if that gap comes back a little bit, that she might just soft pedal, freewheel, and allow herself to go back to the chase group and join in the chase.
There's not much interest of Sunweb Wiggle High Five, maybe even FDJ to do too much work in this breakaway. So we may see, I mean, it is all down to Bowles-Dolmans. They put themselves in this position, but how do they win from here? They don't really want that group to come back. They'd rather, you know, have the numbers that they have here, clearly. So they'll have the most interest to keep the pace high. But even if they are caught from that group behind, they still have some good representation.
How many allies will they have, that trio of Bowles-Dolmans riders in the front of the race? Well, I guess Silence will probably have discounted the options now of Kirsten Wild. I would imagine she's gapped beyond redemption, and she won't be featuring in the finale. So Silence really have to commit to this move. They've got 2 riders there, so they probably have the services at their disposal of Gutierrez and Danny King. Sunweb, no, they won't be riding. Nor too, I don't think necessarily will Knetemann from FDJ. So it's again, really delicately poised. And a fascinating race, Rochelle. I think this is women's racing showing itself to its very, very best. It's tactically nuanced, it's sophisticated, it's brutally strong, and it's really quite unpredictable at the moment. So yes, they have all the aces to play, but it's a question of in what order they play them and to what effect at the end of the race.
Well, as you said, it will be an opportunity now for Danny King, but her teammate Kirsten Wild that won this race last year, she might be a little bit isolated given that there's 2 riders up the front without the teammates, but she is a very experienced rider and able to get a good group together to try and chase this back. But
she'll have to, if she's going to do that though, Rochelle, she'll have to benefit from the work from other teams. She hasn't got the numbers, I think. Absolutely. With 2 riders up the road and her, you know, there'll have to be an allegiance of other teams to bring her back, and she'll have to benefit from that.
Yeah, she'll certainly be trying to get some assistance from the other teams, getting them motivated and making the other riders around her believe that they can get back and have opportunities still to win this bike race. So she's really good at doing that. So there's still a chance, Kirsten Wild, but don't forget there is a group behind the leaders before you go back to the group of Kirsten Wild. So it's Amy Peters of Bowles-Dolmans. These riders will keep the pace high, Bowles-Dolmans, and then we can expect a little bit later some attacks to go from Bowles-Dolmans. They won't want to come to the finish in a sprint. They want a safer type of victory with a solo breakaway.
The gap is growing. The gap is definitely growing to that group containing Hannah Barnes. It was 34 seconds up to 47 now, so Amy Peters doing all the work on the front once again. And if Lizzie Deignan ends up winning this race, I think she's got a big debt of gratitude to pay to Amy Peters, who in the company of Chantal Black ignited this race repeatedly in the opening phase and now continues to batter herself in the services of Lizzie Deignan. It is growing, but it's not, when it gets to a minute 30, you might think it might be beyond repair, but while it's only 45 seconds, it's still possible. A lot will depend on the motivation, who's doing the work, how committed they are. At the moment, it's just one rider pushing this on, and they're all sitting on her wheel. That's the chase group. That is the group that contains Giorgia Bronzini, the big hope for a Wiggle High Five in terms of a sprint finish. And it contains the British national champion, Hannah Barnes, sitting in 3rd wheel at the moment. Sunweb working very hard as well for Corinne Rivera to bring this back. Amy Peters, though, leads the race on the run-in to Harrogate. Welcome back. 53.2 kilometres remaining, and this could be the pivotal moment in this race. You could see now the defining move because it is getting away. The group of riders at the front of the race, and there are 8 of them, and 3 of those are from Bowles-Dolmans, now have an advantage of over a minute. They are chasing hard at the back, but I think this group is going away, and they possibly might never be seen again. And that's because Anna van der Breggen, and now the big race favourite, gritting her teeth, Lizzie Deignan herself, taking the responsibility of driving this on a little ramp, and looks like that's a big attack now, trying to break this little group up and actually lose some of the other riders, particularly Gutierrez, the rider from Silence, who has a fast sprint finish, and you can see moments of weakness from her latched onto by Bowles-Dolmans. She almost sits up and gives up, and I don't think she's going to be part of this group for very much longer. And that's exactly what they do, isn't it? Bowles-Dolmans sense that weakness, capitalised, have the riders to do it, and Deignan is taking full responsibility and continuing to do damage to that group, almost to her own detriment there, as Amy Peters finally gets gapped. Her teammate Deignan continues to do damage. Knetemann, as well as the rider from Sunweb, and that's Juliette Labou, the French rider, she's going backwards, and so too is Claudia Lichtenberg, and very soon we've only got 3 riders left in this race.
Well, Danny King's done a great job to stay with those. Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen really dug deep to hurt everybody there. They wanted to, like I said, it could be that those two go to the finish by themselves, but Danny King's done a fabulous job to stay in contact with them. But it's possible that these two will just ride as hard as they can all day until it's just the two of them left. Claudia Lichtenberger, big job to do. She wasn't ready for that move when it happened. She dug deep, and these two just kept driving the pace, and it's going to be very difficult for her to get back now. So this race is, you know, Bolsdolmans are taking responsibility.
Just a bit.
When you're a favourite team coming into a race, you can often say, okay, well, everybody's turning to us to make this race, and it can be a little bit daunting sometimes, but they've really taken responsibility and really want this victory. They don't want to leave anything to chance.
Well, the Wiggle High Five rider Claudia Lichtenberg is distanced by a few seconds as they start to go into the feed zone. Flat out, really. Anna van der Breggen and Lizzie Deignan with Danny King on the wheel. And finally, after a very tactically nuanced race, full of complications and at times confusion as well, has crystallised down to a very clear situation. It's a two-up time trial involving two of the fastest riders in the world. Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen almost have the entire race at their mercy, save for one rider, and that is, well, a rider that Lizzie Deignan will know very well indeed. Former rider who you've worked with, Rochelle, and it's all down to her to spoil the party. Danny King has the responsibility of preventing Lizzie Deignan or indeed Anna van der Breggen from taking the win here in Harrogate.
He seems to be nearly in an impossible position here, with those two are probably going to start counter-attacking until Danny King's not there, because Danny has managed to hang on to the wheels in the past and beat maybe not Van der Breggen, but depending on the work that they do, they don't want to take Danny King to the finish, that's for sure. It's a little bit risky, so they will communicate in a bit and see how they can shake Danny King. But as we said, Anna van der Breggen should be willing to hand this one over to Lizzie Deignan. Either one of them could win racing against each other. Lizzie's having a word with Danny now, but wouldn't make sense for Danny to pull any turns, because there will be some attacks, and she will struggle to hold these two at some point.
Well, normally in a feed zone you see conventionally in a race that some of the pressure taken off, and you see the riders feeding. I didn't actually see any evidence of that. That was raced full on, wasn't it, throughout the feed zone by Deignan and van der Breggen. This is what remains of that group that Deignan just exploded with that acceleration. That's Amy Peters, who's done a fabulous job setting up this big move from van der Breggen and from Deignan. She won't be bringing this back. Amy Peters still riding though, isn't she? I guess just on the off chance that these riders do come back, she still has a job to do. She can't entirely sit up just yet. But I think that's a big if.
Yeah,
the real question is, what can Danny King do about the situation in which she finds herself?
Oh, Danny's done a fantastic job just to be there with those two. So, you know, out of this entire peloton, which is really world class, Danny's proven that she is one of the best climbers, and obviously very strong in the time trial and in intense moments. So she's been able to hold on to these two, and you know, these Bolsdolmans is a very confident team, and the riders will be, you know, relaxed and confident. But will there be a moment of fear about Danny King is still here? What are we going to do about this? So yeah, at the moment they're happy to just ride, keep the pace high, but then they'll want to do something about Danny King being there with them.
We've got less than 50k to go now, and they're actually going to enter the flattest part of almost the entire parcours today. For the next, 15-20 kilometres, it is pretty flat, and then the road starts to rise again. And you've ridden these roads, or driven them, I should say, and you've pointed out there are a number of uncategorised climbs before the finish line in Harrogate, which, by the way, for the final 500 metres, as you'll remember from the Tour de France in 2014, it's the same run-in, features a climb.
Yeah, certainly not as easy as it looks on the profile. The final part of this race, there's still some nasty little pinches in there that will really sting the legs, but in general, you can see that they're trying to keep the pace high, and they won't, you know, ease off on the pace until they're really sure that they're not going to be caught by the big sprinters.
So just a reminder before we dismiss any other possibility completely out of hand, this is a second group on the road. It features Labou and Amy Peters and Roxanne Knetemann, the rider from FDJ. That's Juliette Labou, the rider from Sunweb. A further 44 seconds further back down the road, and 1 minute 40 behind the lead three is this group. And that is Corinne Rivera, just sitting on the back. Hannah Barnes is also in this group. So too is Giorgia Bronzini from Wiggle, as well as Cordon. So there are two riders from Wiggle High Five in that group. A couple of riders from Sunweb. So you wouldn't entirely rule... They've got numbers. That's the one advantage that they do have, that group.
Yeah, 1 minute 40 now back to that group. I mean, it is a strong group, and there is every possibility that they could get back to the leaders, depending on... Obviously, Danny King's not going to do any work out there, and, you know, it's all at work. And I was just going to mention nutrition. I mean, anything can happen, and you can go hunger flat, and suddenly the pace drops significantly. But these two riders from Bowles Dolmans are very experienced, so they're not likely to let that happen. But still, with 47 kilometres to race, it's really... Oh, you can see now it's closing in 1 minute, so there is a possibility it could come back.
Yeah, that's a minute back to the group of three, who are, I think, going backwards and will probably be reintegrated into that slightly larger group. And then they'll have, what, some 13, 14 riders riding against two, essentially, because, as he rightly said, Danny King is not contributing in terms of setting the pace to that lead trio. Yet to win this year, Lizzie Deignan, but today would constitute a golden opportunity, I think, to take victory.
Well, you were mentioning before, Ned, that she'll have a lot to pay back her teammates for today's ride, but in fact she has done an incredible job this year for her teammates and being there and setting things up for Anna van der Breggen to take her victories that she's had this year. So whilst we haven't seen Lizzie Deignan take a win yet, she's been there, you know, second in the last three classics. So some communication now. Claudia Lichtenberg has been caught by these three. Counter-attack or keeping the pace moving from Roxanne Knetemann of FDJ. So the question they'll need to ask themselves is, do they keep pushing to try and catch this group of three, or do they wait for the riders behind and all get together? Claudia Lichtenberg will certainly be communicating with Audrey Cordon and Giorgia Bronzini in the group behind her to ask if they would like her to wait, or so we may not see Claudia Lichtenberg contribute to that group that she's with now.
Through Massam they go. Left-handed, and Deignan has opened up just a little bit of a gap to Danny King, and she's pushing on again, isn't she? I mean, in terms of taking responsibility, and that's an interesting change in the tactics. It's almost as if Deignan has said, I'm feeling that good, I think I can do this on my own, and Van der Breggen's just sitting on King's wheel there, and I wonder if Deignan just fancies a solo. 46k to the finish, impossible?
Not impossible for Deignan. I mean, she wants this one so bad, and she's probably running on adrenaline now, in a very good position, feeling confident. And to have a teammate like Anna van der Breggen, also if she takes a risk and it fails, Anna van der Breggen's, you know, she's quite quick as well. So in a head-to-head sprint with Danny King, normally you would put your money on van der Breggen, but if you consider the amount of work that she has done in compared to Danny King, that could be a little bit of a dangerous position. So Lizzie Deignan, sorry, you're going to hear me say that a few times, but Lizzie Deignan's, she really wants to come to the finish solo.
Well, I think that's a fair indication of what this group intends. Amy Peters is on the front now, and she's riding tempo. She's not really flat out there, because the gap, as you can see, between groups 2 and 3 is shrinking all the while. It's only down to about 20 seconds now. So odds on, the smart money says that group will swell now, and it'll be 14, 15 riders, most of whom will be motivated to try and bring that group back. So don't, in terms of how close this race is, don't read too much into the fact that the gap between groups 1 and 2 continues to grow, because eventually that'll all come together and it will stabilise, because the gap between that main group of chasers is remained around about 145, 150 or thereabouts for some time. So there's some stability, at least in that sense, and that is the group I'm talking about. That's the third group on the road, 151 now. So yeah, growing a little bit, but it's not absolutely over, and the bigger this group gets, the more chance they might have of getting across to the group of Van der Breggen, Deignan and Danny King. So It continues to be full of conundrums and riddles. Very finely poised, but extremely impressive so far from Lizzie Deignan. 45 kilometres to go, 1:39 to the second group on the road, but this group you're looking at is getting bigger all the while. Welcome back. So, much as predicted, that second group of 4 riders, including Claudia Lichtenberg from Wiggle High Five and Amy Peters, have been reabsorbed into this bigger chase group now. And the chase is definitely on. So a race that we thought was kind of done and dusted because of the attack from Anna van der Breggen, Lizzie Deignan and Danny King and that selection. I don't think Rochelle is entirely over just now. The motivation is there in that chase group. The gap has stabilised. It's certainly not growing. It's probably being, if anything, nibbled away at by the chase. And there are a number of teams there represented in Lumber, and they're going to work together.
Yeah, they are going to work together, and obviously they've got the strength in numbers if they can cooperate together back there. And what's going to happen here? Lizzie Deignan takes her first attack. Danny King is just missed the wheel there, but she'll have to fight. These counter-attacks are going to come from the two, Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen. So Danny King's in a difficult position, but I sense a little bit of fear from the Bowles-Dolmans riders about the condition of Danny King, because she does look comfortable and she has been sitting in, having a little bit of recovery for a while. So there may be some communication between Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen, but a little bit of a squeeze there. She wants to be on the wheel of Lizzie Deignan, 2 teammates together. They know they've got a little bit more of an explosive attack than Danny King, so if they can attack together and get a little bit of a gap, then they can work together. But I think that for the first time in this race, they are sensing a little bit of fear. Danny King was looking in very good condition out there.
Into West Tanfield they go, visited on the Tour de France by royalty. I was there, I remember on that day in July when Prince William and Kate and Harry, he was there as well, dropped in to say hello as we look down at the Marmion Tower and a hot air balloon. It's very interestingly poised now, because if they start messing around to try and dispatch Danny King and get rid of her, launching attacks, and then as Lizzie Deignan appears to go again, and van der Breggen, what that will do is disrupt their time trialling effort, if you like, that has given them this advantage in the first place. And you can see the effect it's having. 1:37 now, 10 seconds have been shaved off, and mainly as a result, I think, of that attack by Deignan, the fact that van der Breggen was briefly dropped off the back and Danny King responded, and then of course the pace just drops off again, and it's not that consistent time trialling effort that they probably need at this point if they're going to definitely hold this group away.
Well, we've really got a race on our hands. You can see here in the second group that there is a commitment to bring this back. 1 minute 38 with 40 kilometres remaining. And in the front there, it would be going through the minds of Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen that if they just keep the pace high and keep riding, Danny King is going to be a little bit more fresh coming into the finish. So the mentality might have been, this is hurting, so we want to make sure that it also hurts the legs of Danny King, and the repeated attacks would be something that hurts Danny King. So will they just keep riding, or will they start attacking, one after another to try and tie the legs of Danny King rather than just pulling along for a free ride? So rather than thinking that, they've got 2 things to think about here. That's the danger of the closing group behind them, and Danny King, and she looks very, very comfortable.
Yeah, she hasn't really looked as if she's been put into too much trouble or distress yet, but there's 40 kilometres of attacking still to respond to. She gets on the radio. Everything that she has done so far, she's done right.
There's communication now on the radio from Lizzie to Anna, driving the pace there on the front.
Thinking this through. This isn't as straightforward as it might have appeared. So the teams that are chasing are primarily Sunweb and Wiggle High Five. Sunweb have got 4 riders in there, 3 of whom will be working. Corinne Rivera is being protected, and you can see her there. She's a 4th of the Sunweb riders there. And the Wiggle High Five riders are pretty committed as well. There's the British national champion, Hannah Barnes, who's essentially getting a bit of a free ride at the moment. She's got no teammates in this move, and I think she'll just be sitting on and hoping this all comes back together, because if it does, she's a sprinter and she would have a real chance of a very high place, if not the win. So a great move from her, and she's earned her right to be in that group by climbing so well.
Well, interestingly, in this group, it's only Wiggle, High Five and Sunweb doing the work at the moment, and we've seen the sprinters of both teams, Rivera and Bronzini, actually doing turns themselves. So if they had cooperation, I think, from a few more riders in that group, there would be a higher chance. But at the moment, it looks like these three have it completely under control, because the gap's coming down and then it's going out. It's coming down, it's going out, which means they're getting radio communication up the front here of the time gaps and when the bunch is sitting up and when it's closing in. So
just saw Danny King putting her nose in the wind as well. That was not insignificant. I think that maybe what you've got here is a three-rider time trial at this point, and King possibly sensed the danger of that gap being closed as well, and decided at this phase in the race at least perhaps she has to contribute here to keep this group away.
Well, that's one thing that will also be going through the mind of Danny King, is that she would prefer to do a little bit of work and risk coming third in this race than being caught from, you know, by the group behind, and that would be the best result for her personally and for the team to ensure, firstly, that she's on the podium in such a big race. UCI points on offer, a very prestigious race, so Danny King will, maybe she will just contribute and ride this to the finish if this group behind comes too close. But the closing gap has actually gone out again now, and if that is going to come down, it'll probably be in the final moments when these riders might start to do a little bit of cat and mouse and attacking.
The belief will still be there, won't it, in that chase group? They won't have given this up. I mean, 143 is big, but it's not irretrievable with 37.6k to go. They'll have to, I mean, they're duty bound to continue this as hard as they can and see what they get out of it in the next few kilometres. It'll be very interesting to see whether Danny King does a turn on the front here after Van der Breggen peels off and flicks her elbow. Will King contribute now? That might be key to the tactics of this race at the moment. Huge turn though by Van der Breggen. Three successive races for Boels Diamonds. Van der Breggen 1, Dijkman 2. Boels Diamonds 1-2 in three of the biggest races on the women's calendar. Amstel Gold, Flèche Wallonne, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Anna van der Breggen won them all. Lizzie Dijkman helped her do it, and now the favour is being returned. The only fly in the ointment from their perspective is the rider in green, Danny King, who is providing at least a bit of head scratching for them. They're trying to figure out how to get rid of her, but at the moment they might have an ally in Danny King. Mind you, the gap, again, Rochelle, 10 seconds have been knocked off as we get possibly a more accurate reading.
This is the rider, Ellen van Dijk, from the Netherlands. She has been labelled in the peloton the strongest domestique of all time in women's cycling. So a lot of the victories that go to her team are very much a result of the work that she does, and I don't think that we've seen her give really big strong turns yet in this bike race. I think she's got a little bit left, and she knows that it'll be in those final closing kilometres that she can bring it back. She's got a high pace as well. So we've seen, this is Corin Rivera from Sunweb in second place. We've seen the actual sprinters of Wiggle, High Five and Sunweb come through and do work themselves. So we see Giorgia Bronzini now, 2 times world champion on the road, coming through to do a turn. So the sprinters themselves are contributing to the rolling pace of that chase group. So they very much want this to come back 131, but we'll just see it probably for another, 5 kilometres, go up and down, out and in, and then we'll see what these riders here have left.
Under 1 minute and 30 seconds now for the first time, 1:29. And when that group came together, the gap was around about 150, so 20 seconds have been clawed back to this elite group of riders up the road. Well, you could have written a few scripts for today's race. I don't think you would have written this one. This is really, really fascinating racing, isn't it?
It has been. I mean, Boels Diamonds would have believed that they could come to the finish with just Lizzie Dijkman and Anna van der Breggen. They would have really believed that they could do that. They probably didn't expect Danny King. They may have mentioned her name in the team meeting as a possibility of somebody that could climb, get over the climb. Danny's obviously also a really good time trial rider, so maybe it was a name that they threw around, but I think their biggest fears may have been Rivera, Claudia Lichtenberg, who wasn't able to hang on, and a few other names, but Danny King's been the one that's managed to stay with these two. So I think that she's going to become, if they keep riding like this, more and more of a danger.
Well, they're going to have to get rid of her at some point. They've got 35.6 kilometres to try and do it, and in the meantime, they've got this coming up the road in their direction as well. Giorgia Bronzini from Wiggle High Five, the Italian sprinter, former world champion, as you can see, much like Lizzie Deignan with those rainbow bands on her cuffs. And Anna van der Breggen, European champion, Olympic gold medalist and a former world champion, Lizzie Deignan there, in the company of another Olympic gold medalist, albeit on the track, Danny King. That's how good this field of riders is. And what a good job Anna van der Breggen is doing here. Is it going to work, though? 1:30, so that's a little bit of time that they lost has been stabilised at least.
Danny King's in business today. She's wearing a speed suit, skin suit type outfit today, so she hasn't had to actually push a lot of wind yet, but we might see her go for a solo break. And the thing with Danny King is that she is a very, very strong rider, but these two that she has with her are very explosive, so how can she get that jump and get that gap on these riders? You'd expect Anna van der Breggen and Lizzie Deignan would start to fatigue, and because it's been a long, long time pushing the wind for those two riders.
Very still today, unusually still for this time of year in Yorkshire. There's barely a breath of wind. And now King goes through, rolls through and puts her nose in the wind, and she is working. She's contributing to that group. They're sensing danger here further back down the road. She's got a teammate in this group of chasers as well, and that's the rider from Spain, Gutierrez, who packs a fast finish and is not one of the riders who's contributing at all to this chase. You can see the green helmet right towards the back, where Hannah Barnes is also lurking. Amy Peters, of course, from Boels Dolmans, also will not do a jot of work here, clearly.
Well, she's a very fast sprinter as well, Amy Peters, so if this break did come back, that's another card that Boels Dolmans have to play. Obviously, they're really doing their best to get Lizzie Deignan up for the win here, to pay her back for the work that she's done earlier season, and that's their first ambition. But if it gets a little bit dangerous or out there, I think that they still be confident that they've got quite a few strong cards to play with van der Breggen and Amy Peters also being capable of winning. So that's a few riders there getting communication with their vehicles, and it's still coming down. So Ellen van Dijk, as we said, one of the strongest or the strongest domestique worker in the peloton, and today she's been called up to do the job again for Corin Rivera, the smallest rider in this chasing group from America. Made history this year, being the first American to win the Tour of Flanders. And a little bit of a surprise win. A rather large bunch came to the end of Tour of Flanders, but we knew today that it would be just a few riders coming to the end. So it's a lot faster. It looks a lot faster coming into the finish than we would have thought it would be from the top of the climb. But there are a couple more little steep pinches to go.
119, 118, continues to be whittled away at. Interesting point in this race. Maybe the next phase, if this gap continues to shrink, will come when the catch is imminent. And you might find that the teams who've done all the work, so Wiggle High Five and Sunweb, sit up a little bit and encourage other teams to, and you might find that the chase might just stall at that point, as you often see other teams being encouraged to take a bit of responsibility and refusing, and then the politics within that chase group might become quite complicated.
Yeah, it can go both ways as well. If this is, it's getting closer and closer now, so, you know, 1:14, and it will be over the next 10 kilometres where we'll see a significant close. If there's anything, if the power in that chasing group is there, I think this is now when they're going to have to really, really lift and see what they can do, how close they can get. But the closer they get, it could motivate some other people in that chasing group if it looks like it's in reach, and they're going to make the difference to just pull a couple of hard turns. So be interesting to see if Wiggle High Five and the team of Rivera Sunweb get a little bit of a hand from the other riders. We see again it's the same two teams doing the work here, but there are teams from riders from Canyon SRAM, FDJ have two there. The only riders there that shouldn't be working is Amy Peters of Boels Dolmans and with Terrace of Silence.
Well, a lot of the other riders are just taking their chances and hoping this all comes back together again. 1K to go, and it's almost an irrelevance, but let's say that it's there anyway, is an intermediate sprint at Ripon. I don't think you'll see anything happening amongst these group of riders here. In terms of the intermediate sprint, they're simply thinking about the finish line and their possibilities of getting a win for their team. I'll be surprised if anything happens here. That is a very, very secondary story into what is a much bigger developing narrative on the road here. 1:11 continues to come down. When it gets within a minute, then it really is game on.
Yeah, I mean, we saw last year, I think the small group of three with Lizzie Deignan was in, still had 1 minute with 15 kilometres to go, and she was caught. So hopefully for Lizzie Deignan, it's not a replay of last year. But Anna van der Breggen really is sacrificing here for Lizzie Deignan, trying to set her up. She has done an amazing job. The winner of the Olympic Games in Rio, and you know, a difficult race for her to have pulled off to win after what happened to her teammate from the Netherlands on the descent in Rio. Here goes Lizzie Deignan.
Is that a move for the intermediate sprint? Big crowds here in Ripon, and they are applauding a Yorkshire rider with another British rider on her wheel, Danny King from the south of England. And Anna van der Breggen sitting on those three riders still together. Look at that.
I think Lizzie Deignan was just taking advantage of the incline on the road and the fans on the side of the road. I mean, this is going to be lifting more so for Lizzie Deignan and Danny King than those riders chasing back in the peloton, the Americans and the Italians there that are hoping to get this back. But it's coming down now, so this is it's going to be an interesting finish.
Magnificent. Well done, Ripon. The thing is, it's not just Ripon, is it? It's every little town, every village along the route. Even yesterday, when people really should have been at work and not watching a bike race by the side of the road on Friday, they were out in their thousands. So a little side note on today's race, but Deignan takes the second intermediate sprint in Ripon. King on the front now, 1:07 the advantage. Coming back together. As things stand, it is coming back together, and it continues to be Giorgia Bronzini taking the responsibility on the front from Wiggle High Five. Two teams dragging this race back. Hat tip and a mention should go to the two British riders in this group, including the British National Road Race champion, Hannah Barnes, who's there, but also from the Drops team, Anna Christian, and what a good race she's having. There she is, right at the back, with Hannah Barnes in front of her. Excellent to find herself in this company and in this move. So from a British perspective, as they take the crowds here in Ripon, it's not all about Lizzie Deignan. There are two British riders represented in this group as well, and keep your eye out for what they do.
It's been an impressive year for Anna Christian. She's had some fantastic races. We won't call them results, but she's on the way to much bigger and better things, and it has been a fantastic year for her. She's been lining up in some of the biggest classics and being amongst these names and some of the world's best. So she has put her hand up and said that you know, she's really taken the next step this year. It's been very impressive to see. So yeah, we're talking about Anna van der Breggen's victory at the Rio Olympics, and the devastating accident she had to witness of her teammate on the tricky descent there in Rio. Annemiek van Vleuten came down very, very heavy, and Anna van der Breggen had to keep riding, and you know, it wasn't too far to go to the finish, but the first thing that crossed her mind when she won an Olympic gold medal was not about the victory. It was more about, how's my teammate? It was a devastating accident to see. So unfortunately, Annemiek van Vleuten is back to her winning ways, so it looked a lot worse than it actually was, which was very lucky.
It did indeed. It did indeed.
Impressive ride by Giorgia Bronzini, but will she have anything left for the sprint if she continues to drive the pace? She's obviously very, very keen to try and bring this back, but it has stabilised at 1 minute and 7 seconds.
Well, you call it at home. We can't. It's that close and it's that unpredictable. We're going to take another short break. Painful, difficult, laborious progress now. Anna van der Breggen Lizzie Deignan and Danny King, who is a part of this move now, an equal member, sharing the workload, perhaps not quite to the extent that Anna van der Breggen and Lizzie Deignan are, but doing her bit, because look at that time gap. You've been away for a couple of minutes on a commercial break, during which time the chase has managed to claw back 5 or 6 precious seconds. Now they're at a minute, and now psychologically they're hovering around that minute mark, and under a minute, and belief will start to flood through that chase group. But it comes at such a cost, doesn't it? Every kilometre, every second that they gain back on this group is hurting the chase as well as the trio of riders up the road.
I'm pretty sure nearly all of the riders in the front here in the chase group as well are in a lot of pain. It's been a very aggressive race right from the start. These two, Anna van der Breggen and Lizzie Deignan, they went up the main climb of the day, the one categorised climb, absolutely full gas as hard as they could, so they'll have to be starting to feel the pain. But one of the most special things about Lizzie Deignan is the way that she keeps her composure on the bike when she's hurting the most. She looks like she's not under pressure. She can keep a straight face. Her style on the bike doesn't change. You see a lot of riders when they get fatigued and under pressure that they start to move around a bit. Lizzie Deignan has just a beautiful composure on the bike, and we don't see when she's in pain, and it's just going to be, you know, now it's coming down, but just really, really slowly. So I think these 3 out in front have their podium positions pretty much in control. We could be wrong, but
Oh, that's a big call, Rochelle. So you're fairly confident they've got the race where they want it still?
well, you know, they are, you know, 3 of the strongest riders in the race,
yeah.
and there's not a whole lot of cooperation back in the chasing group. This woman here, Ellen van Dijk, has a special ability to lift in the, you know, final 10-15 kilometres, but there's just not that many riders with power left in the legs and contributing back here in the chase group. So you've seen even the sprinters of each of these teams, Sunweb and Wiggle High Five, the 2 teams that have been working, and only you know, even their 2 sprinters have been rolling through and doing some pretty significant turns. So yeah, I think Lizzie Deignan and Anna van der Breggen and Danny King will be able to hold them off until the finish. But yeah, 25.8 kilometres to go. It's going to be interesting.
There we go, 25k to go. Danny King on the front. As we look at the glorious Fountains Abbey, UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the largest of all the monastic ruins in England, dating right back to the 12th century, destroyed by Henry VIII and the dissolution of the monasteries. King, van der Breggen, Deignan, that stubborn gap. Sometimes it's a second under a minute, pops back up to just over a minute. Rolling terrain now all the way to Harrogate, and on the outskirts of Harrogate there's a long drag up before they hit the outskirts of town, and they drop down again, and the final within the final 500 metres there is a ramp up to the finish line. That's where Mark Cavendish crashed, of course, on stage 1 in 2014 on the Tour de France, and Marcel Kittel powered his way to the finish line and took the yellow jersey. Deignan's opened up a bit of a gap, and King has to close that now. Van der Breggen just sits on the wheel of Danny King.
You just saw as Danny King came around the corner there, she dropped her chain from the big ring to the little ring, and was a little bit too easy to get her momentum up again. But this is 54 seconds now, Ned.
Still confident, Rochelle?
Yeah, I'm still, I mean, I just think Lizzie Deignan wants this race so much. She really does, and it's going to be, I know, Yorkshire, she's really, you know, motivates her, lifts her. She, you know, it's a race that she'll want more than any other race that she's done so far this season, and it'll be interesting to see if she does push on for the World Championships that'll be held in Yorkshire in 2019. So she spoke about retirement last year, but re-signed with the team Bolstorm, so I think that we will see her in 2019 trying to take victory on these roads.
I think it was an emotional year from Lizzie Deignan last year, and possibly that figured in her thinking about retirement as well, but she seems rejuvenated now. And certainly back to her awesome best on the roads into Harrogate today. 54, 55, 56, 57 seconds. So, yeah, painful progress. Progress nonetheless, though. And they have actually, since they got together, that group, taken a minute back on the trio of riders. But they've still got 55 seconds to gain back. And they've got three of the strongest riders in the race to contend with. I mean, could you even see a situation as we look at another shot on a sunnier day of Fountains Abbey? Could you even envisage a situation if you get your prediction wrong, Rochelle, and it does actually come back together again? Is that the end of Lizzie Deignan, or could Lizzie Deignan just recuperate in a bigger group and then win nonetheless? I mean, is she that good, or would she pay for the price ultimately of having been in this breakaway move?
Normally you would think she'd have paid the price from the amount of work that she has done today, and the fact that there are some really fast sprinters in that chasing group. However, the fast sprinters in the chasing group have probably had just a day as tough as Lizzie Deignan, because this course has been you know, not really well suited to them, so they'll be probably feeling it just as much as Lizzie Deignan. So no, it wouldn't be completely over for Lizzie. Last year when she was caught in the final kilometres, I thought that she may be able to have a sprint, but I think she switched off completely, and that's the thing with people that have the speed of Lizzie Deignan. If you get caught and you just switch off, okay, it's game over. But I think she will fight this one right to the line.
Nasty ramp this, isn't it? Little stinging climb to get over, and the repeated terrain here might just cost this group a few of their harder workers. I wonder if Ellen van Dijk will thrive in this terrain, and whether or not she might find she starts to go backwards.
Well, one of their teammates from Sunweb is struggling over this little pinch. It might be the end of Roseanne Slick.
So that's one rider down. She would have been needed for Sunweb to contribute to the chase. And this is going to, I think this is going to cost the chase group more than it costs King, Van der Breggen and Deignan. So the rolling terrain between here and Harrogate tips the balance right back in favour of the lead three.
You can see that now with the timing. I think for the chasing group, they can only make time back when it's faster and flatter and a little bit downhill, rather than these uphill sections, because that's what's really in the strengths of Van der Breggen and Deignan. They're really thriving on those rises in the road. That's where they're able to take back a few more seconds.
Then again, Rochelle, an extra tactical complication comes at the point at which these three start to feel that their gap is totally defendable again, and then the tactical nuances of what do they do about Danny King start to come into play again. And you might see these repeated attacks which slowed them down before.
This is exactly why the chasing group are not giving up while they're still, you know, they're riding. Even if the time gap's going out, they're going to keep riding, because you don't know what's going to happen up front here when they do maybe start to play cat and mouse. But just getting in the last of their nutrition inside the last 25 kilometres now. So it'll be a big question to see how Bowles Dolmans want to play out this final few kilometres. They will be starting to think about the strength of Danny King and how are they going to get Danny King dropped from their wheel. That's Audrey Cordown, French national time trial champion, so very well suited to just getting into a rhythm and keeping the pace high. And she's had one of her best seasons to date, been very consistent. Amy Peters comes through. It's
interesting, isn't it? But that's just her almost disrupting things as a rider from High Tech as well, who is for the first time visible on the front. So, yeah, that unchanging order of Wiggle, High Five and Sunweb has changed somewhat now, as other teams are encouraged, are they, to chase? I mean, certainly Amy Peters wasn't contributing there.
No,
they do have a new ally here from High Tech.
There's High Tech there, FDJ we might see come up to the front. There's a rider from Drops.
It's Anna Christian.
Anna Christian.
And the two riders from FDJ, including Roxanne Knetemann, who was part of that original 10-rider breakaway. 101, so they are not gaining at this point at all. Ellen van Dijk is still there, though, for Sunweb, and that's important. If and when the road does flatten out for a few kilometres, she needs to get back on the front and put the hammer down, so to speak. Haven't seen King going through for a while yet, and maybe she's beginning to save her legs and think about responding to the inevitable attacks, or even launch an attack of her own.
Well, at some point I think she will launch an attack of her own, because, you know, I mean, it's hard when you're not out there and you can't feel if you know, you can feel sometimes rather than see if a rider's struggling just by the pace might drop off just ever so slightly, and you can tell that somebody is feeling a little bit fatigued. There's signs that Danny will be able to read out there of those two that we can't see, and that will determine whether she waits for a sprint or she has a bit of a go, but I think she's going to be very heavily marked. Anna van der Breggen for the first time under pressure. Lizzie Deignan putting down this. Is she going to be able to drop Danny King? This is the question.
Not at the moment.
But Anna van der Breggen, she has been working extremely hard today and starting to feel the effects of that. Lizzie Deignan, this is her move. This is where she wants to go. She really wants to distance Danny King, but she cannot shake her at the moment. This is really going to be exciting coming into the finish.
Absolutely brilliant response from Danny King, because that was a sprint. I mean, she just sat and she goes again, and every time the road tips up and the gradient just gets steep on her, she just seizes it as an opportunity to inflict hurt on Danny King. But at the moment, as things stand, with just over 20k to go, every time King has responded, and van der Breggen's been distanced here and dropped, and Deignan knows it, and she's sitting up and waiting.
She will wait because she's already sensed now with that full effort that Danny King is a real problem here for these two, because she gave her maximum effort on that climb and Danny King was still there. So her only option is to have the numbers.
But all the while, watch the impact on the time gap to the chase, because Deignan at the moment is sitting on, that is a considerable drop off in the pace there. King is not riding too hard, and Lizzie Deignan is sitting up and waiting for Anna van der Breggen. Meanwhile, this is full commitment from the chase, and they've dragged back 10 seconds as a result of that attack, and then what happened after the attack with the regrouping of that group. If they carry on like that, then suddenly this chase group is back in the game, and that's exactly what we were talking about before.
As we said, it's a very familiar scenario here, what's happening as it was last year with 20 kilometers to go, 50 seconds. But the only significant difference is that there's two riders up the road from the same team. So will they be able to hold off this chasing group?
Peters is just riding to the front and trying to mix things up and disrupt the chase. She knows the danger that faces Deignan and van der Breggen. She's not part of this effort at all, the rider in orange, bringing this back.
That's Audrey Cordon again. She's a super domestique, you know, one of the best in the peloton, and she's been riding in function of her teammates all this year, but also had the best results, the best condition of her life this year. So she's doing the majority of the work of the chase there. Van der Breggen knows she has to make contact here because Lizzie Deignan, sorry, she is really fatigued now. She knows that Danny King's got something left in the legs, and she does not want to go to the finish with just her and Danny, so she needs to bring it back to a numbers game. And when the two of them are there, it's going to be difficult for Danny to keep covering both moves, but she looks like she's got some pretty good legs coming into
that was interesting, wasn't it? Because that was almost perfect for Deignan there. She almost teased Danny King into working. King would have sensed that they can't carry on riding as slowly as that. They need to keep riding hard, and she was pushed into a position where she then, perhaps also sensing an opportunity herself to get rid of Anna van der Breggen, she started to ride really quite hard. So Armistead was able to sit on her wheel for a bit. The gap grew for a little bit. It's now come back in, and it's still fascinatingly poised.
We might see Amy Peters jump out of this chasing group and try to go across on one of the pinches, so they've got three in the front because she hasn't done any work in this chase, and she should have recovered from the work that she did previously in the race. So it's Claudia Lichtenberg on the front there. Wiggle High Five have really done a lot of work here together with the Sunweb team. But like we said, Hannah Barnes is sitting there as well, so this could be interesting.
It's hard, isn't it? Two Wiggle High Five riders have done a fantastic job there, including Bronzini. She's played her part as well. Cordon, though, moved to the front. And Van der Breggen's back on, and Van der Breggen is back on the front, as is her wont. Now, what's going to happen to the time gap now that Van der Breggen is riding again? 48 seconds, 47 seconds. Gets to 30, and then it really does become critical. And we're back into three-rider team time trial mode. What's that conversation about? Armistead to Van der Breggen. What do you think was being said there, Rochelle?
Very difficult question, Ned.
Yeah.
I think
what
Lizzie,
do we do now? Might have
Lizzie
been the
may
question.
have been saying, whatever happens, stay with me. Yeah, we can't afford to break up. They do need the strength in numbers here. Danny King has shown how strong she is today, and Lizzie obviously feeling a little bit fatigued because, you know, with fresh legs, she'd be able to outpower on a steep little climb like that.
All right. One more commercial break before the finish line in Harrogate. Let's get it out of the way. This is fascinatingly poised. 18.1k to go, and that group is coming back. 42 seconds, the advantage. We're back live in this fascinating run into Harrogate. Just over 15 kilometres to go, and it is still right in the balance. Over 30 seconds their advantage, but you just sense that the belief is beginning to ebb out of this group, and just a few moments ago on a little bit of a climb, this is what happened. Watch Lizzie Armitstead in third place, Lizzie Deignan, I should say, in third place, looking over her shoulder, and that's what she was sensing, the imminent arrival of this chase group as we rejoin live pictures. There they are, 35 seconds, the advantage. And as the helicopter pans up the road, that's what the gap looks like. So they've locked on, they can see them now, and that's going to help the chase. Absolutely,
having them in sight, that's really going to motivate the chasing group. And these three riders out in front, particularly Lizzie Deignan and Evander Bregan, they are very, very tired. They have been riding this race so aggressively right from the start. And again, back in the chasing group, it's all the same riders from Wiggle High Five and Sunweb taking up all the responsibility of this chase. And these two riders in particular are known as two of the best domestiques in the world, Audrey Gordon-Rogot and also Ellen Van Dyke of Sunweb. They've done an amazing job.
Yes, Hannah Barnes, the British National Road Race champion, hasn't contributed at all. And it's interesting that Giorgia Bronzini is just alongside her, or in front of Hannah Barnes, the Wiggle High Five rider, former world champion, two-time world champion. She had been doing a lot of the work, but now that the catch is, well, you sense it's quite imminent as you look at it there. Bronzini is starting to protect herself now and has dropped further back and isn't contributing any longer because she's probably the best prospect for success for Wiggle High Five, should this all come back together again. But you know what? It's still not a given, is it? 14.6k to go. And yes, they can see them, but still, these 30 seconds are going to be hard to close out. And Deignan goes. And it was always going to be the case, I think, that eventually she'd have to go on a long one. This is a bid for the finish line. She needs to get rid of Danny King right here and right now. King has managed to respond every time to the attacks from Deignan, but this time looks harder. Just a little rise in the road, the launch pad for yet another attack from Lizzie Deignan, and this one looks big.
She had to make that move then. We knew it was coming. I'm sure Danny King was just waiting for it as well. But the explosive power that Lizzie Deignan has is very, very hard for any rider to match. And Danny King might have more power in the legs. Be interesting to see. But what happens now that Lizzie Deignan has the gap. But that's what Lizzie Deignan, she's such a smart bike rider. She knew she had to use her power. Here it is.
Well,
so
the telltale sign would have been for the last couple of kilometres, Deignan hadn't put her nose in the wind. She'd been sitting on the wheel of King and Van der Breggen, and maybe that was an indication that she was planning this. That little glance that we saw earlier over her shoulder to see where that group was, she does it again there. She sees nothing but the remote figure of Danny King going backwards. So this is a time trial now. Deignan against the clock, against the rest of the chase, which is still being orchestrated further back down the road. And don't forget, there are, well, she's on her own now. She has dispensed to the services occasionally of Danny King, who was doing a bit of work. Van der Breggen has popped and gone. She's no longer part of this race. That's what it looks like. That's a huge advantage. But how far back down the road is that chase group? And don't forget, they have a numerical advantage. But blimey, she's absolutely ripped that. I mean, she's just flown up the road.
That's a super impressive and explosive move. She really has put some distance into that chasing group. But here they come. So Anna van der Breggen completely exhausted. She's had a fantastic ride for Lizzie Deignan. Just getting a congratulations there for her ride from some of her fellow riders in the peloton. But now we're going to see the strength of Ellen Van Dyke from Sunweb. For her sprinter, Corin Rivera, who won Tour of Flanders. So now it's the chase. Sunweb and Wiggle High Five, they've done all the work in this chasing group. There is a number of sprinters in here, including Hannah Barnes, very, very capable of this.
Danny King's teammate as well, Gutierrez, in the green. She hasn't done much on the front. She's done nothing on the front. Fast finishing. And, of course, Giorgia Bronzini.
And Amy Peters, very, very fast finisher, and from Bowles Dolman's she'll have to be ready to have a really good go at taking this victory if they manage to catch Lizzie Deignan. Doesn't look like they will at the moment, and her adrenaline will be running high now. She's got super tired legs, but she this is it, you know. She's going to give absolutely everything. Can the crowd lift her?
Well, the time for bluff and tactical complication is over. This is very simple as she roars through Burstwith. The Yorkshire rider, former world champion Lizzie Deignan. This is a redemptive ride after all her frustrations last year. Her frustration played out by her low placing in the Olympic road race, a race that she targeted for so long. Here she is. She has the lone lead of this race. And according to the information that I've got on my screen, you haven't got, she has a 45-second advantage over that big chase group. And don't forget, Danny King is caught somewhere in between Deignan at the front of the race and the remaining riders containing the sprinters. There we go, there's some time gap, so 45 seconds. That's where the real race is, you sense. I don't think Danny King will be getting back to Deignan. I think she is more likely to be swept up by this chase.
Well, Lizzie Deignan's not known as a time trial rider, but she has actually won a world title on the track in the pursuit, and she's just out there getting into a rhythm now and using the crowds and the adrenaline to bring her home. It's going to be close, but she's done everything she possibly can right today to try and take the victory here.
Perhaps, Rochelle, perhaps arguably, I mean, maybe it was always inevitable that we'd see Lizzie Armitstead on her own, launching a big, long-range solo attack, but in an ideal world, it might have been at 5 or 6K, maybe not at 12.5. I mean, it is a long way out.
Yeah, I think the little problem that she had was that Anna van der Breggen was starting to really tire, and she needed to lift that pace. Danny King looks like she's really hurting now. She doesn't want to be caught by that chasing group, but this Lizzie Deignan, she's on a mission.
It is, that's exactly what it is, it's a mission. Big pre-race favourites in the strongest team by a country mile, really. Got everything right to this point, but then ultimately it's down to you to win the bike race. And it's Armitstead against the world, and what you're looking at there is the world. Colin Rivera from Sunweb sitting in second place, the American rider, as Cordon continues to hurt herself in the services of Giorgia Bronzini from Wiggle High Five, the fast-finishing Italian. You can see her just towards the back of that pack on the right-hand side of the road. And now, finally, riders from FDJ and High-Tech are beginning to move towards the front.
Well, Claudia Lichtenberg, the climber from Wiggle High Five,
paying for it now, isn't she?
Done quite a bit of work today, and that might be the finish of her. Lizzie Deignan, here she goes. She's giving everything she's absolutely got, doing an absolutely fantastic job with 11 kilometres to go. 48 seconds.
You wouldn't want to be a bookmaker laying odds on this race, would you? Because it's very finely balanced. 20 seconds back to Danny King, but you can't rule out. I mean, she's not given up. She's tapping away. She too is involved in a time trial here and just has to kind of find her rhythm and hope that Deignan weakens and that she can hold her form together and just close that gap. That group, though, is being blown apart on that little climb.
Well,
Lichtenberg has gone.
Two more of the Sunweb riders, so Ellen Van Dyke, and we can't see at the moment. Yeah, Corin Rivera still there. Or is Van Dyke?
Bronzini and Barnes. Once again on that testing little climb. Hannah Barnes is still thriving on this climber's terrain. But their numbers are reduced and the time gap is going out. And maybe Armitstead timed that solo attack to perfection. She took with her a lead of only about 30 seconds. She's added 20 seconds to it, and the response has really hurt Ellen Van Dyke and Anna van der Breggen, who understandably is going backwards, not forwards in this race. And that chase group has become a bit of a rabble behind, and at the moment it's only going one way, and that's in Armitstead's favour.
Well, over that little climb, these riders here, Ellen Van Dyke and Van der Breggen, they actually got dropped off the chasing group, but they're fighting on. They're really fighting on to come back. But this, to me, looks like a very hard task for the chasing peloton, given they've lost most of their strength there in Ellen Van Dyke. 55 seconds. I think it's that Lizzie Deignan will also be getting word from her race radio of what's going on, and this will be lifting her, that this chasing group is not as strong as it was now, and I think she's really going to go close to bringing this one home and having a textbook ride from the Boels-Dolmans team.
Under 10 kilometres to go, nearly a minute's advantage for Lizzie Deignan. Back to the chase group of, well, what is it, 5, 6 riders left, maybe a bit more. Danny King is the second group, all on her own, on the road, and look, 40 seconds now, so she's lost 20 seconds very, very quickly to Deignan, who continues to stretch out her advantage.
Well, this will be very, very disappointing for Danny King if she is swept up by the chasing group. I think that's likely to happen, but, whoa, 9 kilometres to go in 53 seconds. Can Lizzie Deignan do it? This is what's going to lift her. These home crowds, they are going to be cheering with all their energy to try and lift Lizzie Deignan to the finish.
Through Hampthwaite she goes. Less than 9k to go, gritting her teeth, digging in, and so too is King, not giving up, the rider from Silence. Apart from anything else, she wants to hold off the chase if she can and seal second place, minimum requirement, and maybe, just maybe, hope that Deignan has overcooked it and gone too hard too soon and starts to wilt. No sign of that at all at the moment as Deignan stretches or holds her lead. It's not growing at the moment. How many riders are left in this group? Barnes is still there, so too is Gutierrez. Bronzini's there, Amy Peters is still there. One of the riders, at least from FDJ, is still there. No, both of them are. So Knetemann is still there. And so too is Shari Gillot, the Australian. 50 seconds.
Seems there's only one rider in that chasing group doing the work, which is Audrey Cordon. They've lost Ellen Van Dyke, they've lost a few of the Sunweb riders, so they've got another rider of Bowles Dolman's, Amy Peters, just sitting on, and then a few other riders who are not willing to contribute to the chase at this point. Well, this will be an absolute dream ride for Lizzie Deignan. Look, Danny King is now getting chased down, caught by the chasing group, still led by Audrey Cordon, Brago, and Hannah Barnes does look very, very comfortable there. Amy Peters is fast, Hannah Barnes is fast, Riviera is fast.
Hannah Barnes, I think, is an exceptional ride. You really wouldn't have predicted that she would thrive in this kind of very, very selective group that's got up the road on this kind of terrain, but there she is.
Well, look, she was a discussion around our table yesterday evening, and there was a comment made by a former teammate of hers that she is one of the strongest riders in the peloton, but not given so many opportunities. She's being a bit moulded into the domestique role, so it's great to see her in a position here where she can actually hopefully have a sprint for herself, and we've been able to see the freedom she's had today to show us what she's actually capable of, so it's an impressive ride.
Well, Danny King has been absorbed into that group where she joins her teammates Gutierrez, and Gutierrez will now say to Danny King, all right, well done, now you work for me. If Danny King's got anything left to give, I'm sure she will work for Gutierrez. But at the moment, no one's getting close to denting the advantage of Lizzie Deignan, who is fully focused. And the grimace has disappeared. It's more that calm, concentrated look now on her face. It'll be hurting for sure. But she knows her limits. She's so experienced, isn't she, Lizzie Deignan now? Knows how to win races. Albeit she hasn't won this season so far. She's been working for Anna van der Breggen, but this is her race, this is her opportunity, and she is riding it to perfection, and she has a minute's advantage over Anna Christian, heading the response at the moment from drops. Sooner or later, these other riders are really going to have to get involved in this chase if it's going to come to anything. Amy Peters clearly won't.
No, look, I think there's no interest here from any specific riders other than wiggle high five to increase the pace, so it doesn't look like they're going to get Lizzie Deignan back, and it could be a race for second place.
Amy Peters responding to an attack there just as we cut away from Hannah Barnes. Looked like Barnes had attacked and Peters has gone with her, so it'll be interesting now when we next get pictures of that group to see exactly how it looks. But Deignan has a 57-second advantage, and it almost feels as if everyone else is riding for second place at this point. But there's still 7.5 kilometres to go. And some of those are uphill, as you can see. Lizzie Deignan continues to climb now as she edges towards Harrogate in this complicated, difficult finish line. Tailor-made, though, for Deignan. If she could design a course, it would probably look like this. Is she just beginning to suffer? She's lost, what, 7 or 8 seconds?
We saw that attack. We haven't got a good picture of who it was that attacked back there, but Hannah Barnes, she attacked in Gent-Wevelgem. She only got caught 3 kilometres before the finish, but she might have been the one that initiated that move behind that brought that gap down a little bit. But Lizzie Deignan, she's just going to hurt now all the way to the finish. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear her make a comment after this race that it's one of the hardest races she's ever, possibly victories she's ever had. So it'll be interesting to hear, but I think she's really, really hurting and digging deep.
Well, you earn your status as a favourite, and then you have to deliver, and it doesn't come easy.
Certainly doesn't come easy, especially when, like we said earlier, that they're the strongest team on paper, and the whole, the entire peloton was watching what they were going to do. So if they deliver today, that's delivering under pressure and as favourites. So.
Well, if that was a little attack from Barnes, it didn't come to much. Amy Peters was straight after it, I think, so she has sat up. And Bronzini, well, what did that little gesture mean there? It was just, I think, you come in, nothing more than that. It was Knetemann just allowing her in.
Well, I think we can call
given up,
it. Yeah, they've given up the chasing group after such a long day, but just not enough people willing to, they want a chance to be on this podium, and it's very interesting that they're not willing to sacrifice a chance to be on the podium to go for the victory, because it's, as we said before, it's really, really important, and for the teams to get on a podium at a race that's this big. So the chasing group has given up, and Lizzie Deignan will be very, very happy to hear that information.
That'll be coming through the earpiece, and she'll be absorbing the fact that 1 minute 9 seconds, it seems like the chase has evaporated behind her, and she has broken their will, taken the race by the scruff of the neck, and is riding to victory. And if that's the case, the next 6 kilometres will be a coronation for Lizzie Deignan. Of course, Rochelle, she can't just stop pedal now.
No, she's still going to have to
ride hard, otherwise the belief will start to flood back into that chase group. But you can see the advantage now all the while growing.
Yeah, she's definitely going to have to endure the pain. That's not going to go away. She's going to have to keep pushing on the pedals, but that time check looked like it was 1 minute. We're getting 1 minute 17 seconds.
Yep, I think that's out of date, that chalkboard, and she has more up-to-date information from the team car coming via radio into her ear. 1:16 the advantage, 5.8k to go, and Gutierrez is on the front now for Silence. Danny King still part of this group, and well done to her for maintaining her position.
Shara Gillo. Oh, there's another group behind coming back as well, but this is Shara Gillo of FDJ. She's had a strong season. She's known to be a climber, so she's using this little bit of rise in the road to just try and break up these riders. As we said, they've given up on the chase of Lizzie Deignan, but they're now racing for second place. They really want to be on the podium here in Yorkshire, in Harrogate, when they get across the finish line. So Amy Peters will be...
Watch out for Knetemann.
Knetemann counter-attacks now.
Oh, thought about it anyway. Peters is just there in the police role, isn't she? Tracking down everything, but Knetemann goes again. And so FDJ are playing that 1-2 card that we saw so many times from Bulls Dormans in the opening phase of racing. And you're right, there's a little group, I think, containing Ellen van Dijk, possibly coming back to this second group on the road. That injection of pace just nibbled a little bit of an advantage back towards them. Took it away from Deignan, but it's gone, hasn't it? And Anna Christian goes from drops, and well done to her. Peters responds, and so too does Danny King, who's still found something in her legs.
Well, Amy Peters is not going to chase. It has to be someone else now. Hannah Barnes makes her move. She knows Anna Christian very well as well, so she's determined to close this one down or get across to Anna Christian and work together with her. But Amy Peters there marking every move into the finish. It could be another 1-2 for the Bulls Dormans team, which we've seen for the last 3 races in the last 3 classics.
So Anna Christian's attack was neutralised by Hannah Barnes, with Amy Peters sitting on her wheel. I think Peters' primary concern at the moment appears to be Hannah Barnes. She's the one who really bothers her. Mind you, Peters seems to be chasing down everything at the moment. And Danny King, how strong is that? To have been in that group and on the attack, and there she's playing her full part in this second group on the road as well.
Amy Peters there just keeping an eye on everyone. She knows that if there was any chance that Lizzie Deignan would be caught, it would then be her job and responsibility to try to bring the victory home for Bulls Dormans. However, I think the pressure's off, because with 3.9 kilometres to go, Lizzie Deignan, very, very well deserved. Here she is. What an amazing ride by Lizzie Deignan and her teammates from Bulls Dormans.
Well, she's coming into the outskirts of town now, and I think she can start to think about how to celebrate this victory, because it ain't going to come back. 1 minute and 18 seconds for all the attacking behind is not going to be closed down. No matter how hard they go now, the kilometres have run out, and they've run out of time. So this is the battle for second place. Deignan, though, in a race of her own.
And Anna van der Breggen back in this group for Bulls Dormans. So they have a very strong position here also for another position on the podium. Lizzie Deignan out in front, and Ellen van Dijk returns and puts the, this is the speed that she needed to put into the chase a little bit earlier. And the only person, I think, in this peloton really capable of lifting the pace high enough to make a dent of it. Unfortunately for the victory, it's a little bit too late. So Ellen van Dijk will be working for Rivera to try and get her onto the podium into second place. There'll be a really interesting sprint behind Lizzie Deignan today. A lot of fast riders.
Out of sight, aren't they? That long stretch of the Skipton Road on the outskirts of Harrogate revealed absolutely no sign of that chase group. She is out of sight in a class of her own in this race, and the team themselves have been in a class of their own. I think you would have to acknowledge the contribution made early on by the likes of Amy Peters and Chantal Black, then taken up by Anna van der Breggen. They've all played their part, one after the other. There is van der Breggen, who's also survived and is sitting in the wheels in this chase group. 1 minute 16 seconds further back down the road. Anna Christian still there. Claudia Lichtenberg. And there's Corinne Rivera from Sunweb. Further up towards the front, being led out by Ellen van Dijk. So 2.1 kilometres to go, very shortly now. As she comes down the Skipton Road, she'll turn right-handed. Here it comes, the right-hander, and she'll line herself up on the Ripon Road. Just 2k to go now. Lizzie Deignan has an impregnable advantage and can start to enjoy, if the legs and the lungs will allow her to, this moment in the county of her birth, not far from her hometown of Otley. And there will be a huge crowd at the finish line to greet the winner they, I think, all wanted to see, the former world champion, one of the most popular riders in the women's peloton, at least from a British perspective, and clearly one of the strongest. She has worn the rainbow bands in the past. She's had her triumphs, she's had her low points, particularly in 2016. But this is a new year, this is a new Lizzie Armitstead. All thoughts at the moment of retirement and calling time on her glorious career so far put to one side, because she's back to her best. 1 minute and 13 seconds her advantage, and only now 1,300 metres to get to the finish line, all on her own, out of sight.
Oh, it's been an incredible ride, and you just saw that special moment where her team director, Denny Stum, drove up next to her, and they have a very close relationship in terms of performance and tactics, and he would be very impressed by this ride. Obviously worked with Lizzie for a long time, but I think that's a very special moment when a rider can give, rider's director can give her the information that you've got this one, you've got to keep pushing on the pedals, but you really, well done, you deserve this. And a very inspirational ride, and an impressive ride from Lizzie Deignan.
One last climb just to sap with the remaining strength. Meanwhile, the attacks are coming further back down from FDJ, and Amy Peters tracking that move as well.
That's Canadian, the daughter of one of the best riders. Her father was 11 times riding the Tour de France, 10-time stage winner.
But she's got a long way out if she wants to get second place there, and she's got Amy Peters and the fast finishing Corinne Rivera.
And Giorgia Bronzini.
And Giorgia Bronzini ranging up behind her. So that is Gutierrez also closing the gap, and Hannah Barnes not too far behind. So that group has still stayed together, and they'll be contesting second place. Meanwhile, Lizzie Deignan, all on her own, takes the Flamme Rouge. She has less than 1 kilometre to go, passing the white rose of Yorkshire. We'll see plenty more of those on the finish line here in Harrogate, and the applause will only gain in strength until it reaches a crescendo on the same finish line that greeted the riders of the Tour de France, don't forget, in 2014, and celebrated the victory of Marcel Kittel. That's where she's heading, and that's what she can look forward to.
Shara Gillow of FDJ, she really wants to be on the podium. She's using this part of the road, coming up to the 1 kilometre to go banner. As we said, this will be an interesting and very exciting sprint and finale. Anna van der Breggen, we just saw drop off the back there. She's probably been given word that your job's over, we've won, doesn't matter now about second, third. Lizzie is about to cross the line for the victory, and she is still hurting and still pushing on the pedals. We can't see the peloton in sight behind her, so this is going to be a beautiful victory for Lizzie Deignan.
It's the final ramp, the final push for home. Lizzie Armitstead, unopposed, is going to take this win, arriving at the finish line on her own, at home once again in Yorkshire, and returning to where she belongs. She believes, always, in every bike race she competes in, on the top step of the podium. She's a born winner, and on this form, you can forget any talk of calling time on her career. Lizzie Armitstead is still there. She is still one of the best, if not the best rider in the world at the moment. And she takes the win in Harrogate to wild celebrations from the Tour de Yorkshire. Armitstead, the winner, back to her very, very best in Harrogate. Pure panache, pure class, pure strength. That's how you get races won.
Oh, it's the first race she's won of the 2017 season, but what a special one in fine form. She certainly had to work hard for that. This is Shara Gillow coming into the finish. Is she going to make it for the second place? That'll be a fantastic result for her if she does. Very strong time trial rider. She's been strong all season this year, but the peloton, few sprinters back there.
Danny King was trying to set things up. Bronzini and Barnes are ranging large in her view mirror. I think Gillow's going to do it, though. Oh, big attack from her. Where's that finish line? Not far to go now. Barnes, though, is closing the gap, and so too is Amy Peters. After all that work she has done all day, she sat on a little bit. She sweeps past the Australian. Bronzini, though, comes out of the wheel of Amy Peters, battling for second place. Rivera's involved as well, and that's very, very close towards the line. Rivera is going to take second place. I think Bronzini's going to hang on to third. Yes, indeed, she does. Amy Peters settles for fourth, with Hannah Barnes picking up fifth place, and that was a decent little sprint for the minor placings too.
Well, it's a hard finish, isn't it? And you could see that they started their sprint very, very early, and you saw some super tired legs sprinting for the finish there. But here's Lizzie Deignan, and she is super, super happy. That has got to be one of the races she's had to work so hard in. She had the entire peloton wanting to get together to see what they could do to try and beat Boels Dolmans, but they, as a team, they really, really use their strength. Fantastic. Here she comes into the finish for the replay.
Well, this is the moment that we all thought we'd see. We didn't know how we were going to see it, and we didn't know necessarily whether we were going to see it, but in the end, it looked simple, didn't it? It was far from simple. Armitstead celebrating a famous win here in Harrogate, one that she will remember whenever her career ends for the rest of her life. Those world champion rainbow bands, I think, reminding all of us of the rider she still is, the former world champion. What a team performance. I mean, I know you work for a rival outfit, Rochelle, and these are your competition, but you just have to take your hat off sometimes, don't you?
Absolutely. I think this, what we saw today was a result of the sacrifices and work that Lizzie Deignan did for her teammate, Anna van der Breggen, earlier in the, well, just a couple of weeks ago for the last few races. But there's the big hug from Amy Peters. And you'll see a few more when the rest of her team comes in. They only started with 5 today, but 5 very, very strong quality riders. Other teams were allowed to have 6. They were allowed to have 6, of course, but they're racing 2 teams at the same time, one in Luxembourg and one here. There's the wave. That has got to be one of the most satisfying victories Lizzie Deignan has on the record books.
Well, there we go. We look down at the finish line and, well, it duly delivered the expected result. Anna van der Breggen doing her part for the eventual winner, Lizzie Armitstead.
Yeah, the whole of Boels Dolmans did their part today, didn't they, Lucy? It was interesting tactics because everybody knew they were going to go on the climb. They knew everybody knew they were going to go on the climb, and consequently, they were sending riders on the attack from the very start.
Yeah, it was a really aggressive start from Boels, and it's actually just great to see that they were the favourites. Everybody basically knew the tactic, and they still did it. They still managed to get away, and it just shows how strong they are at the moment.
Yeah, and sort of shows too how strong women's cycling is, because it was a really strong, a really tactical race. All right, Lizzie rode away from it in the end, but her means of getting there was pretty tortuous.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't an easy task. Like Danny King being up there with Lizzie, she definitely made it really hard for the Boels riders. But it was quite interesting to see how the break nearly came back as well. Those 3 riders were away, and it was still quite close, and it wasn't a guarantee. So I think it was a really, really good race.
All right, we will take a break. After it, we hope we'll be hearing from Lizzie Deignan, and we'll have all the podiums for you. There it is, Lizzie Dignan's first ever professional win. All her previous ones, of course, having been as Lizzie Armitstead. The first time she's won this season, first time she's won since she got married, first time she's won since the big hoo-ha there was over all her missed tests. And it happened in her home county of Yorkshire. And hard to see whether she was in tears or not behind those shades, but she was certainly absolutely ecstatic, having gone away from Anna van der Breggen and Danny King to win on her own. There's the result. Elizabeth Dignan by 55 seconds in the end from Corinne Rivera, who won from that small bunch ahead of Georgia Bronzini. Amy Peters, who did a lot of the early work, was fourth. Hannah Barnes, a good fifth. Then it was Alarud, Gutierrez, Gillow, Knaterman and Danny King, who held on for so long in that front three, with Lizzie Dignan coming in 10th. All right, podium soon, but first Daniel Freeb is speaking to the winner.
Lizzie, that looked like one of your hardest fought victories, was it?
Yeah, completely. I'm not used to going solo, and particularly not from such a long breakaway. It was really difficult.
It also looked like a perfectly executed tactical plan. Was that the plan this morning?
The plan was to get someone in the breakaway. We had Amy Peters up there, and then for me and Anna to bridge on the main climb and hopefully have a small group in the finish. But I just went on instinct in the last 10k. I saw a moment where it was good to go and didn't look back.
And this partnership with Anna is really quite something. Why does it work so well?
Because we're both really fit on the moment, obviously, and because we're quite different riders. Anna can do that long solo breakaway, and normally I save myself for the finish, but today obviously it didn't go like that.
And they were asking in the studio whether there were any tears behind the sunglasses, were there?
Yeah, it was really special for me to finish here and to feel so much support. It's been a while since I've had a victory, and also just it's been a tough year, and to crown it like this and move on with such local support was really special.
Thanks, Lizzie.
Hey, Grandma.
Yeah, obviously did mean a lot to her. And I mean, is she looked at differently given everything that happened last year, or is she viewed the same as she always was within the peloton?
I think still the same. I mean, it wasn't ideal last year, but she's such a talented rider, and after the Olympics she actually worked for Bowles' teammates and just dedicated herself to helping them. So now it's nice that she's come back and she's had such a strong start to the season, and I think she's actually really well respected within the peloton. So for her to win today at a home race, I think it's really a special win for her.
Yeah, and I mean, when the three of them got away together, Anna van der Breggen, Danny King and Lizzie, this is the moment she attacked, and she obviously felt she needed to, because on the previous little incline, Anna van der Breggen had fallen off the back, perhaps wasn't in the position to one-tour with Danny King, and Danny King was looking very strong, not someone you want to take to the finish.
Yeah, I think Danny King definitely kind of threw a spanner in the works, and she's a fast rider. She's a track rider previously, and Lizzie knows this. So I think, yeah, they were definitely a little bit scared and didn't look so confident. And I think, like Lizzie said in her interview, she just rode on instinct, and she obviously just felt that maybe Danny was a little bit weaker at that moment, launched the attack, and that was it. It's incredible she held on still by 55 seconds in the final.
Yeah. Well, we should say a very impressive ride by Danny King, and often when you've done so much work out front, you get swallowed up by the break, and that's the end of you. But I mean, she managed to hang on to finish 10th.
Yeah, and you could see she was still actually riding strongly at the front and trying to, stay in contention, and still, they were still racing for second, and so she had a really good go. And I think Amy Peters as well, she's definitely somebody who's had a fantastic race. She was so active at the start, and it's nice to see Hannah Barnes, the British national champion, also 5th place. That's a strong ride for her.
Okay, the presentations are about to start. There is Lizzie Dignan first onto the podiums. Let's rejoin Ned.
And there she is. That's the moment that she had anticipated, and I think many thousands of Yorkshire folk who've come out to cheer on the women's Tour de Yorkshire would have wanted to see as well. It's been a while. It's been a while, hasn't it, since she's tasted victory, and for a rider of her calibre, probably too long. So she's back where she belongs.
Absolutely, and I mean, today meant so much to Lizzie, and the start of her season, she gave so much to her teammates, and it would, only be natural that they would give back to her today, but she's the one that actually had to bring it home in the end. And when she made that final attack with about 15 kilometres to go, that was probably, you know, one of the, you'd have to have the confidence in yourself, and she had to hurt all the way to the finish line. So she could have waited for a sprint the whole day, and with the strength of Bowles Dolmans, just had a sprint, but they did it the tough way and the safe way. Very well deserved.
Listen, Rochelle, I mean, you know this rider. You raced against her when you won your Commonwealth gold medal back in 2010, and she finished in second place on that occasion. The next Olympic cycle might be perhaps too far and too distant for Lizzie, although you couldn't rule it out. Probably what she really wants, though, next is those rainbow bands back again.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think Lizzie, I mean, from the days I was racing with her in 2010, she's come a really, really long way and developed into obviously one of the best bike riders in the world. And, you know, she can sprint, and we saw that, you know, effort she did, like a time trial to the finish, and she can also climb very well as well, classics rider. So she's developed into an all-rounder, and she's in one of the strongest team in the world, and a very good leader and captain on the road. So I think that she's got plenty more years left in her if she still has the passion for it. And you can see today that was one on pure passion. So if she wants it, she's definitely got the physical ability to go another cycle.
Not always easy to deliver when you're the favourites, but that's exactly what she's done. And back on the top step of the podium once again. This time, I would imagine, for the points jersey. Lizzie Armitstead, a serial winner, of course, serial collector of jerseys. And I think you mentioned it in the commentary, Rochelle, as she collects a bit of carbohydrates to take home. That's a wonderful trophy. As you mentioned in the commentary, Rochelle, we have the imminence of the World Championships coming to Yorkshire in 2019, and that would be a real focus for her ambition, wouldn't it, I would have thought?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, that's enough to keep her motivated, at least until then. And that's the thing. She can definitely win the World Championships in 2019 in Yorkshire, so that will be the next major focus for her, I'd imagine.
So those were the overall standings in the somewhat secondary points competition. On a one-day race, it's a little bit unusual, isn't it? It's normally just about the win, and frankly, that's what it was about today for Lizzie Deignan. And what a race it was as well, and we've still got the men's race to look forward to. My money says it's not going to be as interesting as that. I mean, you know, I hope I'm proved wrong, but they tend to be, you know, not always as dynamic as that race was.
It was the women's race today was again one of you know, the most unpredictable. The result was predictable, but the way it was raced. This is Claudia Lichtenberg of Wiggle High Five.
And Claudia Lichtenberg played her part in a very, very dynamic race for Wiggle High Five. They didn't get the win, but they did get the King of the Mountains jersey, and she deserves that because she rode brilliantly and did everything she possibly could to counter the dominance of Bowles Dolmans.